All right, hello everyone. This is John, and now this is episode 2 of the Interpolation series. If you have not seen episode 1 or you do not know what interpolation is, please check that out because in this tutorial I'll be providing you with a practice question that you will try, and then I'll provide the solution thereafter. So here is the practice question. Feel free to give it a try. Pause the video, work through the question, and when you're ready, resume the video again. And I'll move on to the next slide now. And here is the answer. So the question goes like this. What is the raw score at the 75th percentile? Well, right away looking at the table, we know that the 75th percentile is going to be somewhere between the 91.3% and the 69.56%. And the first step should be is calculating the width of this interval. And that is done in step 1 here. We go 91.3 minus 69.56 to get a value of 21.74. So 21.74 is the width of the interval presented here. The next step now is to calculate the difference between that upper limit and the value within the question. So in this example, we would be subtracting 91.3 from 75 to get our difference here, which is 16.3. Now we have our fraction for this interval. We know the width of the entire interval, which is 21.74. And then we know the upper difference between the upper limit and our actual value, which is 16.3. Now the next step is to move on to the other side of the table. And this could have tricked a few people if you weren't prepared to see actual intervals being presented where the raw scores are. But nonetheless, these are raw scores, and our rule dealing with real limits, the upper and lower, still apply here. If you're still not sure as to what I'm presenting here, tune into the next slide that will be presented right after this as I'll go into some more detail. But to continue with step 3. So the upper limit for 16 to 20 is obviously going to be 20, so it'll be 20.5. And then the lower limit here between 11 and 15 is going to be 15.5. We subtract the 2 and now we get our difference of 5. So now step 4 is to use our fraction from this side of the table with the difference we found on the other side of the table. So 16.3 divided by 21.74, then multiply by 5, you get a value of 3.74. And now the last step is, now that we have this value, we could subtract that from the upper limit of the raw score here, which is 20.5, to get our answer of 16.76. So that is the answer. Now the next slide, I'll go into a little bit more detail on what is being presented here. So yes, a very quick recap on real limits. As we know, when we had single raw values here, those always represented intervals. What I tried to emphasize in the tutorial is that those are not single data points, those are intervals. So all I am presenting in this question is actually intervals. And those intervals are in groups of 5, 1 to 5, 6 to 10, 11 to 15, etc. But when it comes to those real limits, those upper and lower limits, the rules are still the same. Well, what you're going to do here is pretty much the best way of looking at it is to ignore these numbers. Ignore the 1, ignore the 6, ignore the 11, the 16, and 21, and just look at those upper values here, almost like in the tutorial. Right away, because we know these are intervals, that the upper limit for 20 must be 20.5, and then we know for the upper limit of 15 has to be 15.5. So when the question's asking for the 75th percentile, we know that it's obviously going to be between 91 and 69, but when we come to the other side of the table, just remember it's going to be anywhere from not 20 but 20.5, and not 15 but 15.5. Tune in and I'll provide another example question in the next episode. Thank you for watching.